Thank you. Thank you, Lois. I know her as Mrs. Phillips. She was my son's first grade teacher. Mary Dale, I'll tell you what. When I came in the door, I hadn't seen you in a while. And when I came in, you said, gee, Tumbleweed, you're looking good. And it kind of stung a little bit because I know the 3 stages of life. Youth, middle age, and gee, you're looking good. I guess the 4th stage would be, don't he look natural? I have some friends among you who have reached the looking good stage, and one of them got a brand new hearing aid. He was so proud of it. He said it cost $10,000. I said, what kind is it? He said, 430. What a great time to be in Texas. This is wildflower season, man. I mean, they are at their peak. We were just in Brenham, LaGrange, Columbus area. I have never seen a display like they are out there right now, and you need to go there. On these wonderful, wonderful spring evenings, every once in a while, we'll take a walk with our neighbors who live next door. They're a little older than we are, and one time we were walking around, and usually the man and I walk in front, and our wives are behind us. Well, we were walking along one night, and the guy said, Tumbleweed, I ran across the greatest barbecue place the other day. It is really interesting. It's got bicycles hanging from the ceiling. It's got license plates on the wall. I mean, it's got everything imaginable in there. Bathtubs, everything. I said, well, I want to go there. And he said, the barbecue is wonderful. I said, really, what's the name of that place? Well, he's having a little trouble with his short-term memory. And he said, let's see, what is the name of that flower? It's got a stem on it and sticker. I said, you mean a rose? He said, yeah. Rose, what is the name of that barbecue place? Oh, this is going to be so much fun. Rose is having a little bit of trouble with her short-term memory, too. Her husband said she wanted her husband to go to the store and bring back a pint of vanilla ice cream. And she said, you better write it down because you're going to forget it just as sure as the world. He said, Bluebell homemade vanilla ice cream. I'll not forget that. That's my favorite kind of ice cream. He brought home 2 cans of chili. And Rose said, you forgot the crackers. Anybody here from a small town? I love small towns. I think that's where you find the real spirit and flavor and character of a state or a nation. I met a 99-year-old man in Waxahachie the other day. He said, I can't see, I can't hear. Thank goodness I can still drive. A lady in Sheffield out in West Texas she doesn't get out very much, and she was feeling bad, so she went to the doctor in Iran. And the doctor said, ma'am, have you been through menopause? And she said, if it's not between Sheffield and Iran, I haven't been there. I want you to know it is really a privilege and an honor for me to keynote the largest gathering of retired teachers in Texas. And I can't believe you're all here at 8 a.m. In my travels around Texas, I find a great many people who are individuals. Some people call them characters, but to me, these are people who have the inside track on life and live life to its fullest. By way of recording today, I have brought with me some of the people that I've had the privilege of meeting and interviewing and really getting to know during the past 50 years or so. One of them is O.C. Prophet of San Angelo, a man who spent his entire life in the oil patch. One time, O.C.'s house burned when he was working in the oil patch around Abilene.
And the fellow asked me, he said, did the whole house? I said, it sure did. I said, the kitchen, the dining room, the bedroom, and the living room, and everything burned up. And he said, my gosh, it sure did ruin you, didn't it? I said, yeah, it was a one-room building. I said, burned the living room. And it's one of them Cragin Lumber Company, a friend of mine out of Breckenridge. He'd moved down there, and I like $10 to have my house paid for. I think it cost about 90.
That's as serious and as sophisticated as it's going to get. Ranger was a tough town during the oil boom there. A.L. Sipes of Beaumont was at Ranger during the boom, and once he was robbed.
I had $6. And he said, "This all the money you got?" And I said, "It sure is, sir." He said, "Here's $3. And I said, "What's that for?" He said, "My brother's right up yonder, and if he catches you without any," he said, "he'll kill you."
I am so impressed with what firemen do, and I'm sure that among this group there are some volunteer firemen. I have been so impressed by how fast they get to the fire, how efficient they are. One of the greatest deals in my life was getting to ride on a fire truck during the July 4th parade at Fort Davis. I ran across a man in Central Texas the other day who has the same day fire station.
If you call me early that morning, we'll try to get there the same day.
Bob Murphy is a storyteller in Nacogdoches, and he says, not too long ago in East Texas, the passing carnival star attraction, a baboon, died, and the animal was left in a ditch. Well, it wasn't long before a man in a wagon came by. He saw that thing over there. He didn't know what it was, so he loaded it onto his wagon, and he took it to the general store at Etoile, where some men were visiting on the front porch.
He drove up, he said, "Boys, come look what I got." He said, "Name it and you can have it." Well, they all come out there at the bed of the wagon and looked. Nobody knew what it was. Finally, one of them said, "Listen," said, "Old man Ed Tullis is in the store there." Says, "Somebody go in there and hope him out here." Says, you can sure get Mr. Ed to tell you what it is." Said, "He's 90 years old." Says, "If any man in the country knows," said Mr. Ed will. Well, they went in there, one got under one armpit and the other got under the other, and they hoped him down off the step. Brought him out there, and the old man walked around the bed of the wagon, looked at it. They said, "What air it, Mr. Tullis?" He said, "Well, boy," said, "I'll tell you." He said, "Judging from the expression on its face," he said, "looking at the slope of its shoulders and the shape of its rump," he said, "I believe you done found an old retired domino player."
You're familiar with that game. Lucille Mays of Odessa has worked at some of the finest cafes in the state. She was a cigarette girl during the Texas Centennial in 1936. She was cigarette girl at Casa Manana in Fort Worth. Now, at one point in her career, she decided that she wanted to become a beauty operator. So she and a friend of hers enrolled in beauty school, and on the very first day of class, a woman came in and ordered an egg shampoo.
It was the awfulest mess you ever saw in your life. The lady says, "I want an egg shampoo." And I looked at Loretta. It was her first day too, and she looked at me and I said, "What do we do?" And she said, "Well, we break the egg first." I said, "Well, that's a good deal." And so we did, and then we put it on her hair and massaged it in, which I don't know if it was right or wrong. But then when we got ready to rinse it out, we got the water too hot, and it cooked it in there. and we got so tickled. See, the lady knew something was wrong.
No kidding. Jacksonville used to have a brassiere factory, and teenage boys in Jacksonville had so much fun with that. The place was called Marja's Bras. One time, Shelley Cleaver and his high school buddy, Grady Nutt, added something to that sign.
Morris Birdsong had a big humble filling station there in town, and right down the street was Marge's brassiere factory. So Grady had measured this sign he had down there, said, "We fix flats." So we decided if we could get this sign and get it under there, it just fit under Marge's brassiere, "We fix flats." So this old sign was big and heavy. It took a bunch of us. So we toted it up there and put it under there. It just fit. The newspaper took pictures of it, and it made the Associated Press, and we put Jacksonville on the map.
Pancho Roberts of Huntsville is kind of going around with mixed feelings these days. He and his wife just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary.
After 50 years with sugar, whoo, man, I need a sympathy card, I can guarantee you. And man, I hate to even tell you this, but the other morning we was laying there in bed, and I said, "Hon, would you mind getting up and fixing me a good old hot breakfast?" She just rolled over and said, "If you want a hot breakfast, get up and set your Raisin Bran on fire."
You know, when the man of the cloth pronounces you husband and wife, it is one of only 2 times in your life that you are like pronounced something. Weddings and funerals look an awful lot alike. People dress up, they pray, they cry, and they usually take you away in a nice car. Chris Davis is the county judge of Cherokee County, and he has conducted some rather interesting outdoor weddings. And along the way, he has learned a few things.
A boutonniere will not properly hang on a Budweiser t-shirt.
When my wife Susan and I got married, we divided the checkbook. I got the deposit slips. One older lady who was a retired teacher remarried after her first husband had passed away. And she was talking to a friend that she hadn't seen in a long time. So the friend asked her, "Well, does your husband take you to exotic places around the world?" Oh no. "Does he pamper you with lavish gifts?" "No." "Well, does he shower you with affection?" "No." "Well, why did you marry him?" "Well, he can drive at night." Scott Willie is a friend of mine. He went to the movies the other day. There was a Chinese restaurant right next to the movie, and he stopped in that Chinese restaurant and got some food, and he got it in a to-go carton.
It had noodles and rice in it and beef and hot peppers. And I went outside in a dark alleyway right next to the theater, and I buried that down in my jeans, down low. I had these relaxed fit jeans. And then I waddled inside that theater, and I got inside and I thought, God, I gotta get this out because it was hot. And it was touching a few bare spots every once in a while. It was very uncomfortable. So I tried to unzip right then, so I said, I'll wait till I get to my seat. The problem was that people won't move. They were so inconsiderate. They sat there with their knees sticking out, so I had to kind of twist and squirm to get past them. And when I was twisting and squirming and leaning this way and that to-go container of Chinese food ruptured inside my pants and cascaded down my legs. So I gritted my teeth and I had tears coming out my eyes. I unzipped right there in the theater while I was standing there and started clawing that rice and noodles and beef out of my pants. And it was all over inside my legs, and it was burning me up. And I started flinging it without thinking, and it was landing on people. These noodles were landing on this bald guy's head. I could see him because the screen would light up for a couple seconds. And he was clawing, he didn't know what it was. Something hot landing on me. And I heard a lady screaming, "Hot worms are falling from the ceiling." And I could hear voices screaming as I flung this rice, and the lady was screaming, "Hot ants are on my face." And it was falling down their shirts and down their blouses, tops. I turned around and squirmed out of there and made a run for the bathroom. I had really big red marks on my inner thigh and on my lower abdomen where it scalded me. A couple of men come running into the bathroom. They were screaming too. And one guy took off a shirt, he just ripped it off of him. He had a great big hairy chest of white hairs, and he was pulling rice off of it. And another guy that had come in with him was screaming, "They're throwing linguine at people, spaghetti." Then some other guy came in there screaming about his wife having major burns on her face. And I sort of waddled out, and so I walked home. And I remember I was walking past that Chinese restaurant, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder where my fortune cookie landed.
What was the name of the movie?
It was Catching Fire.
That's what I do. I travel around Texas and get these unusual stories that everybody else overlooks. I was in Cameron, Texas, not too long ago, and I had lunch at that historic eating place there called Papa Johnny's. The main fare is chili and stew and hot dogs. And I was eating there. It was founded in 1917, historic place. I was going to do a piece on it. While I was eating, I kept hearing this ruckus at one of the tables. And I looked over there, and 2 men were sitting there. And one would say something, and the other one would laugh. Well, I'm not going to ignore that. I sat down and I asked the man who had been doing all the talking how he had made a living.
Living in spots. Sometime was dying, sometime was living.
What did you do out there in the country after you got big enough to walk?
Played in the sand.
What did you eat?
Peas and cornbread and meat. That's all we had. Oh, sure. In other words, I had what my daddy give me to eat. That peas and cornbread.
Peas and cornbread.
What was your goat's name?
Billy Goat.
Where'd you go to school?
First one did on nothing. Biggest time I went to school, I didn't go to school too long because I had to work.
What kind of work, Reed?
Cutting kookaburras. You said, what kind of work? I said, what kind of work I was doing? I said, cutting kookaburras.
Did you wear gloves when you were pulling kookaburras?
What that was? What was that? When I was a boy, gloves? Boy, didn't you know we didn't even wear breeches when we was coming up? Shit, what you talking about?
They say the time you spend laughing is added to your life. Those guys are going to be around for a long time. Pat Patterson grew up on the family farm just outside of Elbow, Texas.
We didn't ever get to go anywhere much, and my dad had told us for all my life that we were going to the poorhouse, and I really got to kind of looking forward to it just to get to go somewhere.
I didn't realize this was such an agricultural group. Joe Weeks lives in Woodville, and he really has a big time going around the East Texas woods, seeing what he can find out there. Once he came across a most unusual sight.
This fellow was playing checkers with his dog. And fellow walked up behind him, stood there a few minutes and watched him. He said, "That sure is a smart dog there, play checkers with you." This fellow said, says, "He ain't so smart." Says, "I just beat him best 2 out of 3. Said, "I taught him to play poker." Said, "He was a good poker player." Said, "He could stack a deck of cards." But said, "He got to where he'd give himself away." Said, "Every time he'd get a good hand, he'd wag his tail."
I think some of you know Ronnie Jordan. He had this podium, I think, last year. He was an educator here in the Metroplex, and he wised up and moved to the little town of Hamilton in Central Texas, and he loves it there.
The only problem living in a small town like this, precious little lady when I first moved here told me, she said, "Now, Ronnie, I want to warn you, when you go downtown on the square, you always lock your car." And I said, "Really? You have a little crime problem here?" She said, "No, if you don't lock your car, somebody will put a bucket of squash in your back seat, because we've got a lot of squash growing around here, and they got to get rid of it."
I meet so many talented Texans you wouldn't believe. Roxanne Ward of Littlefield has reached celebrity status by her ability to call hogs.
There's a story behind my hog calling. I was raised on hog farms, and I'm the oldest of 4 girls, and pigs listen to me better than my sisters, so that's where I went and spent a lot of time. And the most remarkable thing about my hog call is they come to me.
Do you own a pig?
Yes, sir. His name's Oscar Meyer. No, that's not going to be his future. He's not going to grow up to be a weenie.
You must practice a lot.
Every day. It's a good thing I live in the country. I do it every morning and every night. Yeah, I spend a lot of time in the pig pens.
Well, now you have perfected your art to a very high level.
The World Championships at Weatherford, Oklahoma, and I've attended 2 years in a row, and I have won every contest I've ever entered. I flown in my first airplane. I have tried my first cappuccino. I got to see the ocean for the very first time in my whole life. And I have limousines. And I hog call down Fifth Avenue out the top of the limousine in downtown New York.
You never know where your talent's going to take you. Carl Condrey is the fire marshal in Big Spring, and when he's not fighting fires, he recites cowboy poetry.
When we was 6 and 9, well, me and my brother was inclined to get in trouble while we was trying to be good. Most times it was our fault, sure enough, but it was just that innocent young kid stuff that oftentimes had simply been misunderstood. Like this one day when we was in church and in the pew we took our perch and it had been raining and the air was thick and wet. Sure made it hard to stay awake. Lord knows it was nearly more than we could take, what with the preaching and the snoring and the sweat. Well, the gal in front of him and me had been perspiring quite profusely, and when she arose her clothes was a-clanging, so to speak, and adding to this situation, upon closer examination, we saw that her dress had lodged itself betwixt her cheeks. It sure looked uncomfortable in there. Lord knows we didn't mean to stare. But being just waist high, well, we really saw it good. And not being one to let things be, my brother reached up and yanked her free, just alleviating the whole problem where she stood. Well, she turned quick and he just smiled, never dreaming she'd be riled, but instead of thanks, she hit him with her purse. It knocked my brother to the ground. She glared at me, then turned around. Now, things was bad, but trying to help, I made it worse. You know, I reckon something had made her mad to whop my brother like she had. I figured it must have been that dress, confound it, so I turned my whole hand on its side and using the sweat marks for a guide, I poked her right back in just like we'd found it. Well, this time 'twas me that felt her wrath. She knocked my senses from their path. I carry a purse scar with me to this very day.
English teachers, that is literature. We have made copies of that poem. It's by Waddy Mitchell, one of the greatest cowboy poets in the world. And we brought copies of it, and they are available free of charge. We bought enough here for everybody, and they're at that table out there. They won't cost you anything. These are free. And there are some things for sale out there. A couple of CDs that have some of the material you're hearing right now, and my latest book. The book is on East Texas, and I've done a series of essays on West Texas that are in the smaller one. Jo Bird is a happy lady who lives in Rockdale. She has met a few policemen because she likes to drive fast.
I've been stopped here in town speeding before, you know. Well, I got to tell you, hon, I can't stand that Jack drive. You know, it's my husband, bless his heart. He doesn't drive fast, does not believe in using turn signals, none of that kind of stuff, you know. I'm telling you, he's a menace. That's all there is to it, you know. He thinks I'm bad because I drive fast. My speed is fast, faster, and fastest. And you start through town, they want you to cut it out. But Jack, you know, one day we were driving along downtown. It was in his pickup. I have no idea why, because I don't do pickups much. Anyway, he was driving so slow, Tumbleweed, you couldn't believe it. And I'm looking around, you know, I leaned over. I said, hon, who are we sneaking up on? Oh, you know, he gets so irritated, you know. Another time, you know, we're going along there, minding our own business, and he's dragging again, you know, and I keep thinking, man, somebody is going to cream us one of these days from behind. Anyway, he's driving along so slow, and I said, well, I think we got a problem over here, hon. He says, well, why, what's the matter, I said, well, we got a dog running along here wetting on the wheel.
When Joshua Wiggins was 6 years old, he spent a weekend out in the country with his aunt. Her house did not have indoor plumbing.
It was a 3-bedroom house, but it sat on telephone poles about 2 feet off of the ground. And she had about 80 to 100 headed chickens that just wandered freely underneath this house. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning, and I had to go use the bathroom, but I was scared of the dark. And I didn't like the dark. I didn't like the idea of walking all 20, 30 yards out in the backyard dark to where you can't see your hand in front of your face and don't know what you're stepping on and trying to find that outhouse. Well, I knowed of a little hole that was in the kitchen floor. My aunt was asleep at the moment, so I lay down on my stomach and I put what little bit of my manhood I had through, I shoved it in that hole through the floor. Well, about midstream, one of those chickens found it and grabbed a hold of it and started pulling on it. And I had no idea what was going on. I was 6 years old. I instantly, with a quickness, without hesitation, just jumped up off that floor. I broke the grip that the chicken had on me, and I was still leaking all over the floor. My aunt come in there, looked at me and looked at the hole in the floor and looked at all the liquid all over the floor, and she just went to laughing, and she instantly knew what had took place. I didn't even have to tell her. I don't care much for chickens nowadays.
You can't make up stuff like that. Hondo Crouch. Hondo Crouch put Lukenbach, Texas on the map and had fun doing it.
The neighboring town of Big Flat, they call us the town of the newlyweds, overfeds, and nearly deads.
What makes up the principality of Lukenbach?
It's a place on Grape Creek, a town. It's like Dallas or Houston, except we only have one parking meter. And they have more. I guess that's the biggest difference. And we have fun. That's our main business, is fun and sweet potatoes. We raise lots of sweet potatoes there.
Lukenbach has become quite famous. Just what goes on there?
Well, unlike most popular cities, everything goes on. Nothing comes off. Nearly every Wednesday we have a celebration. We wave at airplanes.
Can you mail a letter in Lukenbach?
Yes, you can mail. It takes a long time because we're conservative there. We're ultra-conservative. And we don't ever let that mail sack go till it gets filled. And to fill the mail sack takes about 2 or 3 months because not many folks mail. Because stamps are high now. Even in Lukenbach. I mean, you might get them cheaper in Amarillo or Big Spring, but Lukenbach, well, I guess it's the freight on them that makes them cost so much.
What about the zoo? Do you have a zoo?
Well, yeah, it's the pig pen. We have a pen full of pigs, and then we have a pet pig, too, that walks through the beer joint all the time. His name is Oink. Oink Van Gogh. He only has one ear.
There is a beer joint in Lukenbach?
Yeah.
You can buy beer there.
Yeah, it's in the post office. But we have a white line on the floor where you can't drink beer past the white line, because then that's in the post office. And we kind of, we respect the flag and all that. So that's why we don't drink beer in the post office.
Now, there's a store there. What do you sell in your store?
Post Toasties and single trees and Argo starch, pots and pans, buckets, slop jars, and powder.
Do you have any concerts there? Traveling musicians or local musicians, but they might get together and play Beethoven or Bach?
Bach we serve in the fall. I mean, it's a brown beer. We serve Bach. But I've never heard of Beethoven. We used to have Southern Select and Grand Prize, but no Beethoven. I've never heard of that brand.
Any hospitals?
No. In fact, it's such a healthy town. We have no hospitals. In fact, to start a cemetery, we had to shoot a guy.
About how many people live there?
Taken in the west side, too? Well, over in Golden Acres, there's, 2 families. Counting dogs and school teachers? Let's see. I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 11 minus 3, 7. 7 altogether.
Hondo Crouch. I have traveled beyond the borders of Texas. I have been all over the world. Been to China, Russia, Australia, South America, Europe, India, Africa, Cuba. Going back to Cuba this month. I've discovered one thing. There is no place like Texas. I love to explore our state. I started producing broadcast features in my 20s and did that for a few years and then started teaching it along with speech and writing. I am a curious guy, and I got that way because I had good teachers who taught me the importance of meeting deadlines and finishing a job, who made me believe I could do things I never thought of doing. You have helped people do all kinds of worthwhile things, and you taught them that education is really the key to freedom. I had one student who complained about homework. Why do I have to read all these books? I'm going to be a teacher. The most important people in our lives are the people who teach us things. The first book I read was called The Ugly Duckling. My report was longer than the book. Maybe that was my first inkling that I might become a writer. Teachers thought I was funny and called on me to tell jokes at assemblies. I fell in love with the stage because teachers seemed to get a kick out of seeing me up there. I was in Future Teachers of America in high school. I have no idea why. Had no idea I would end up teaching for 39 years. In my writing class, a girl wrote about anthrax. Spores were found in the nasal passage, which is leading to an investigation by the FBI. I wrote on her paper, wow, that's some passage. She also wrote, people come into contact with the disease by eating underprepared meat and people who work with animals. When I judged a UIL newspaper contest, one student's headline read, 38-year-old teen gets reward. Everybody in this room could fill a book with student bloopers. They keep us sane. My students won 120 awards for producing commercials, newscasts, features, and documentaries. Some of those are national awards and one international. When I run into former students today, they tell me their award certificates are on their office walls. They meant something to them. They are signs of accomplishment. They won them in competition. We really don't know what influence we have until long after we have left the classroom. When people leave teaching, some never look back. Others think about things they could be sharing with their students. Thank you for caring and encouraging, motivating, and inspiring people to make good citizens. You've been a wonderful, tremendous audience. It's so great to be here to help you lasso our legacy. Thank you.